All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jim Stachowiak. I'm here today to talk about the Smart Pen and some of the ways that it can be used in the classroom. And we'll talk about what it is and how it works. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do a real good job of demonstrating the physical pen, but I will be able to show you quite a bit with the software that goes along with it. And I think that's an important piece as well. The Smart Pen, for those of you who haven't seen something like this before, the Smart Pen is a pen and a recording device. It's got underneath it, underneath the pen tip, is a little kind of camera sensor. I don't know if you can see that or not. But what happens with this is you use a special notebook. This is an example of that notebook. It's a dot paper notebook. With the dot paper, what you do is you go into class and you would tap record. You can see that kind of across the bottom there. There's a record button. You tap record with your pen, and when you do that, it starts recording everything that the instructor is saying in the classroom. Then after you're done, or when you write a note while you're listening to your lecture, it links the note that you're writing with whatever was recorded at that time. So what we can do then is, after we're done writing notes and listening to what's going on in class, we can come back at a later time to study. We can tap on the note that we have written, and it plays back what it recorded at that point in time. Now we can jump around to different pieces of that recording, or we could hit the stop button on our notebook to go from there and stop listening. So what that really does for our kids with disabilities, it's a fantastic tool in that it makes it easier to take notes. You know, if you have a hard time trying to write down everything you hear while paying attention in class, or trying to write down everything on the board, what it allows you to really do, in its most basic sense, is it allows you to take and basically bookmark a recording that the instructor is giving. So you don't have to try and chase down absolutely everything, write down absolutely everything. You use your pen, you capture the recording, and while you're recording and writing notes, you know, keyword notes, then you go back later and tap on those notes. It plays back what it had recorded for you there. So that can be real helpful for kids that struggle with note taking. It's a pretty basic, really. It's a pretty basic technology. It's pretty easy to use, I should say. It's not necessarily basic. I'm going to share my computer screen with you here so that you can see the software that's going to run with this. Let me tell you just a little bit about the pen itself. So we do have the pen is something that you can go and you can purchase for it can be relatively inexpensive at some place like Target or Best Buy, or any of the office supply stores. They come in 3 sizes: 2 gig, 4 gig, and 8 gig. The 2 gig pens run around $100. The 4 gig pens about $150, and the 8 gig pens are roughly $200. To be able to use them, you have to use that special notebook that we took a look at earlier. So this is that special dot paper notebook. A regular 8.5 by 11 dot paper notebook is it runs about $5. So we can see here that the cool thing about this is all the controls are across the bottom of the page on that notebook. There's no controls on the pen besides an on-off button on there. So you turn the pen on, you turn it off, and then the rest of the controls are run on the bottom of that page. The controls are on every single page in the notebook. Some folks ask if when you turn the page, do you have to restart a recording? You don't. Once you start the recording, you're good to go. You just kind of let it run, and you can write on as many pages as you want. And when you're done, that's when you would go back and hit stop. I want to just point out, I'm going to run you through in an auditory way so you can hear kind of how this works. If you look across the bottom of this page here, there's a little cross menu. That gives us our basics. Here. So I'm going to run you through kind of the menu, and you can find out some of the things that this does. So to access that menu that you would see on your notebook, you can double tap in the middle of the menu. Main menu. And you can hear there it says main menu. Now if I start scrolling down, if I hit the down arrow, paper replay. it's going to tell me paper replay. So even if I don't write anything in the notebook, I can record using the pen and then play it back using this paper replay option on my pen. If I hit down again, it says connect. So there's a way to actually set up some connections so that we can send things wirelessly. If I hit down again, piano, you can draw a piano and play it.
Translator demo.
There is a translator component to this as well. So I could take this, and if I hit the forward arrow,
Spanish.
it gives me different languages that this will work in, and the demo works in Spanish or Mandarin or Arabic. We'll choose Spanish and go forward again.
Write a word.
So it asks me to write a word. I'm going to write a word in English. You're not going to see this. I'm going to write the word hello in English on my notebook.
Hola.
And the pen was able to pick up on what I was writing and then speak it in Spanish. So you can buy an app that allows you to do that. Now if we go out of this and go down,
Shortcut buttons.
there are shortcut buttons. There's settings to this as well. If we go forward, we can change the recording quality. We can change the microphone sensitivity or the playback latency. That's the key one I wanted to get to, was the playback latency. If you go forward within that, the playback latency, if you turn that on, what it's going to give you is the capability to actually listen to what when you tap on your notebook, it plays back from 10 seconds earlier. So you do have the capability then to listen to what was played 10 seconds earlier as opposed to right when you wrote. Because a lot of times you're not going to write something as you hear it. It's going to be, you're going to hear it first and then write it next, unless you know what's coming. So having that latency enabled is an important component here. What I want to show you, so you can actually see some things here. We had somebody working on the other computer, so hopefully we can get that up and running here in a few minutes. But what we do have is this LiveScribe desktop. You should be seeing that on your computer right now. On your computer screen. This is free software that comes with the pen when you buy it. You go and download it from the LiveScribe website. And what this allows us to do is if we can take a docking component. So on the top of the pen, there's a little cord for a USB, and we plug that in, and then we can plug our pen directly into the computer. And what it does is it takes anything that we've got on that pen and it dumps it onto the computer. So here's the notebook that I've actually been playing off of. And if we click on this, this is the note page that I was just working on. If you look down here, you can see where I wrote hello on the notebook page. We should not be having this jumping in our way right now. We'll get that out of there. So if you look at this, this actually kind of shows you what the bottom of our page is going to look like. There is a play button. There's no record button on here, but on the bottom of our notebook page, we would see a record button, and there's the pause, stop, the jumps, and the bookmarks as well. What's neat about this, so you can see here, I've got this document pulled in from my pen directly on my computer. So wherever we see green, if I take and I tap on something that says green, it's going to start playing back from that area. So I could jump around my notes and have it play back from wherever I click. So we can interact with this on the computer just as we could interact with it within the notebook. Now another thing to notice here, we have black text here. That black text is stuff that was written prior to running the recording on the device. So there's no recording being done here. That means if we click here, nothing's going to happen. And if we tap there on our notebook page, nothing's going to happen either. We can only interact with things, with stuff that was written when we recorded it. So here we wrote these things while we were recording. That's why it's in green. That's why we can interact with those things. If we were to listen to this again, if I were to, now that I've already taken these notes, if I were to go back and tap on my notebook page and listen to something that was attached to one of these, and then have it, and write a note while I was listening, what we would find is that when we wrote a note while we were listening to something that we already recorded, it would also link that new note to what was playing at the time. And then when we loaded that into the computer, that would show up in blue. So we would see, we have like potentially 3 different color inks that we can see on this screen when we go ahead and run our Smart Pen through this. So we saw over here on this tab, if we go back to library, you'll see this library. This has all our notebooks listed here. That starter notebook is what I'm playing with right now. I have another notebook here as well. If I go back to that starter notebook, you'll see there's all the pages that we've done writing or recording on. So there's actually lots of ways that students can use this. We have found across the state a couple different things that are being done. One thing that's really cool is that a student that's struggling with accessing or writing math problems down, that's struggling with writing math problems down on paper, the district has gotten him a Smart Pen, because he can speak out his math problems, and he will tap record, and while he's writing he'll speak out what he's doing, and then they turn the notebook and the pen into the teacher, and the teacher listens back to what was being recorded when the student was writing. So it's really neat in that respect, and there's a lot we can do besides just taking notes with it. So I'll go back into this note page real quick and just kind of take a look at, this is what our notes look like. One of the interesting things we were doing here at the university, there's nothing being shared right now. I apologize. Let's start sharing. I thought there was. I must have gotten away from that. There's our LiveScribe desktop. I don't know why that stopped sharing, but there it is. Sorry about that. One of the let's see, where was I? Okay, so again, this is just kind of what our screen would look like when we share it on the computer. One of the ways that we've interacted with this on campus is we had a grant running where we had several professors coming in for training on Universal Design for Learning. And when they came in, we'd give them one of these pens, and we requested that they do something with it to help students with disabilities. And what we suggested was that they take a different student class each period, or each class period, and assign them the task of taking notes using the Smart Pen. And so they would hand out the notebook, they'd hand out the pen, a different student would take notes, so they get the audio, they get the visual on there, and then the teacher would collect it. And then these connectors here would come into play. So what the teacher could then do is they could use these connectors and set them up so that they could either save the notes directly to their computer, email them directly to students, put them in Evernote, put them on Facebook, on Google Docs, and OneNote, or on My LiveScribe, and then make them available to the entire class. So if we were to go back to the notebook part here where we see all the pages, and I wanted to share page 13, the first thing I'd do is I'd go and I'd click on Set Up My Connectors here. So when I set these up, when I click on that, I'm just going to show you, it sets up, you can set up your connectors. So if you go in your computer, you choose where you want those to be saved. When you click email, you set it up and hook it up to your email account by adding your email address. And then if you're using through the service you're using, you would include a little bit more information. When we set up Facebook, we can go here and we can set up we can log in with our Facebook account. So I'll sign into it just so that, and just in case we want to take a look at how that sets up here, we'll sign into the Facebook account. And now, once we've set these up, it's really, really easy to use these. So it becomes really easy to share these things. Let's try one more time setting this up. If not, we won't show you Facebook. We'll just show you the other things here. Okay, so Facebook should be set up now. So now what happens with this is I've got these these notes that I've brought in from my pen to the computer. So if I just take this note 13 and grab it and drag it over here to where it says computer and hover over that so that computer highlights and let it go, it's going to take and ask me, do I want to send the pages that I've typed, only the pages only the audio, or the pages with audio? And I'll say I want both, and I'll hit continue. And now this is going to go ahead and it's going to save this onto my desktop, or into this folder. So I'm going to save this into my LiveScribe desktop folder, and actually I'll just save this right onto my desktop so it's easy to find. And now I'm going to get out of LiveScribe Notebook here, and now I guess I have to go back and share so that you can see my screen again. Or hopefully you can still see my screen. And can you guys see my desktop at this point? If somebody wants to just chime in and type yes or no. No, okay. I don't know why that keeps shutting down on me. Let's see. Oh, I know. I guess I see now. It's just sharing that one thing. So let's share the whole deal. All right, let's share the desktop. All right, now you should be able to see the entire desktop. Okay, so now what we've got here is that note is actually just saved as a PDF, and it's right here on my desktop. So if I click on that PDF, it's going to open it up, and what we'll see is that with I believe it's PDF Acrobat 11 or higher, we can actually save it and have it look and interact just like it does on our LiveScribe desktop. So I can now click on here and have it play back the audio just like if I went down, just like if I was doing this on LiveScribe desktop. And you could, I don't know if you noticed, it was kind of filling in writing as the audio was playing. If I went down here to where you see this little green squiggly line that's half filled in, and I can click on that and have it completely always be green. Oh, nope, it's still going to fill in for me. If I should be able to change that so that it shows up as always filled in and we don't see that kind of filling in. So what we did here with our professors is we suggested that they share that they do that they take the pen, they run in and they have different students use the pen in different class periods. They dump it onto their desktop, and then when they're done, they take that and they either save it on their computer and then link it to the class website. They email it to all of their students. See, if we went and we dragged it over to email, just like we did with computer, if we drag it to email and let it go there, we can choose how we want to send it, and then we can choose where we want to send it by plugging in email addresses here. So I'm not going to do that right now, but if I were to send that and plug it into an email, I could send that directly to a user and they could kind of see how that works. If anybody would like to see how that works, if you want to see what one of those is like, feel free to type your email address into the chat box and I will add you to this email and just send you that note page so that you can kind of interact with it if you'd like to see what that looks like. So we do have that capability to send that directly in email or post it on a class Facebook page if we needed to do that as well. There's lots of different ways to share that. So what our concept here was with Universal Design for Learning was that we'd be able to share these notes so that, here, I'll send these, I see a couple right here, I'll send these to both of you guys. And you'll be able to see kind of how this works. We'll just type you in here. At bwcil.org, and let's see. Sorry, it's hard to talk and type at the same time, and it wasn't letting me copy out of there. So we will send those to you. And the notes that I'm sending you are just notes that I took using, I was playing a video in the background and took some notes on that video. So I just sent those to you. They should be there within a couple minutes. I'll ask you in a couple minutes if they did show up or not. But it shows you just kind of how easy it is to take and send and share those notes. Now I believe you're going to have Acrobat 11 for that to work. We'll see when it gets to you if that works out well for you. But it should come as an attachment. You should be able to open it up and then interact and play with that. Just to kind of listen to the recording of the notes made on that page. Like I said, so we would have professors share this with students, and then students would have both a visual copy of the notes and an auditory copy of the notes, and everybody would have access to them, whether it was through email like this or whether it was posted on the class website. And what the students found, or at least told us from those classes, especially the students with learning disabilities, is that it was much easier to have that smart pen with somebody else taking notes the way that they may take notes in that class as opposed to hiring a scribe who isn't necessarily part of that class on a regular basis to go ahead and write the notes. And they got notes that were more meaningful to them and that were that just seemed to be better off that way. So we did see that they did come through to email, so you were able to get those, which is great, because it's really easy to send those. The other cool thing that you can do that I wish I could show you, but I can't right now because again you're not able to see the smart pen in the notebook. But if I were to write email in here, I think if I were to go to Connector and write email, so I'm going to go back into this. You should be able to hear this menu running if I go in here.
Main menu.
I'm going to go to Connector. Connect. And now it asks me to send. And I can, it'll ask me if I want to send. I think if I double tap here and write email, it'll allow me to write, it'll recognize that I want to send it with an email. Then I tap the pages that I want to send, and then it allows me to scroll through my address book. And from there I can send those, I can choose and send it directly from the pen without ever even having to connect to the computer. It is much easier to send it connected to the computer, but we can send things without ever having to go to that computer. There is a new smart pen out there. I'm drawing a blank on the name right now. It's something like Fly, or regardless, what it's supposed to be is wireless, where it hooks up to the internet. You write on your notebook, and it automatically sends it to your computer for you, and then you've got access to that without ever having to even hook it up. That is great. It's supposed to be really cool. It has the problem with it though is that if you sign into something, if you try and sign into something, or if you have to sign into the internet, as long as you only need a password, it'll work. If you need to plug in a name and a password, it will not work. It doesn't have the capability to do that. So the downside to that is that the SkyPen, that's what it's called. For some reason I was thinking Fly, but SkyPen. We've been having some major issues on campus with that. To get into the campus's system for internet, and this is something called the Eduroam system that a lot of campuses are starting to go to. With the Eduroam system, the idea is you can hook up to any campus anywhere that has this. You don't have to get some special ID whenever you go in, but to sign in, you need to sign in with a login name and a password. With the SkyPen, it only has the capability to recognize networks and allow you to enter passwords. It doesn't have the capability to enter that login name. So if there's a login name you have to enter, or if you have to go to a website and select OK, the SkyPen will not hook up to the internet, and it won't work that way. If you are on your home network and you just have to plug in a password, or you're on a network where you just have to plug in a password, it can access it and it will wirelessly send what you write to your computer so that you've got access that way. And it runs through an Evernote account the way it does that. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It's an issue they're going to have to address, especially if part of their market is colleges and universities, because we can't access that here on campus. We have a SkyPen, and we can't use it on campus. We'd have to go off campus somewhere to be able to use that. Did that end up coming through to everybody okay when we shared it, or is it still floating around out there and not in Carmen's email? Has it come through to your email? If not, I can try and send it again to you real quick and hope that we get it through there. But it should have come through by now, hopefully. If it's not there, let me know and I'll try sending it again. Let me show you a couple other neat features within this software. And again, I apologize that we were unable to get this hooked up to our document camera to show you today. I had another computer set ready to go, and it's giving me real problems with Java, which wouldn't allow me to run the webinar. Of course, technology has always given us some type of problem here. So let's take a look at a couple of things here. If we go up to File and we go to Custom Notebooks, we can take and we can create a custom notebook. So if we had notebooks, or if we had pages that we wanted together in lots of different notebooks, if we hit Create here, and it looks like I may not be sharing again. Let me make sure that this is, oh, nope, I guess we are sharing still. So hopefully everybody can still see this. Let's see here. Okay, let me just real quickly, I'm going to try and send that to Carmen's email again just so that everybody gets a chance to see this. So I'm going to drag that, you guys just get a chance to watch how we do it again. We'll drag this notebook paper page over to email. Oops. Here we go. We'll drag it to email. And I'm going to hit continue. And it's going to ask me who I want to send it to. And I'm going to type in that email address. So at goodwillheartland.org, and I'll just send it. Hopefully it comes through this time. It should send directly to your inbox. You may have to check if it doesn't come through. You may have to check your your junk mail. I don't know if it were to go there. But let's get back to, so I sent it again, so hopefully it should come to you there. If we go to custom notebooks, well, if we had notes in several notebooks, so we can see here we've got the starter notebook, I've got notes within that, I've got this tutorial, and I've got this other starter notebook. If I wanted to create a custom notebook, if I wanted to get some notes together, I can hit create, and I'll just call this one test. And so now I've got a test notebook here. So I can click and drag notes that I have within that one notebook, put that in the test notebook, then I can switch notebooks to the starter notebook here, click and drag this one over, and now if I go and click on test notebook, we'll see I have grouped those two pages in another notebook here. So I can take and put relevant things together even if they're in separate notebooks. Even if we're running different notebooks with our pen, in our software we can take and combine those things. If we go to, let's see, if we go to view here, you'll just kind of see there's some different navigation things, some other navigation options. If we go to tools, this is another important piece that people have found here. If you look at printable notepads, when you buy a pen and you get these notebooks, you do have, you get this software, you get 4 printable notebooks that you can print, printable notepads that you can print out. They're 25 pages each, and that kind of gets you started here with these notebooks. So that can get you started. That's free. I believe you have to have a color printer to be able to get that and be able to print those out for free. So that's a nice kind of free aspect to this. What we've found some students doing with either that free paper or our notebook paper, because all the notebook paper is perforated, is if they want to have what's going to be presented in class on a PowerPoint or something, they'll oftentimes take take the paper out of the notebook, put it in a printer, and then print maybe the PowerPoint slides for the day or the notes for the day in there. That won't link to audio when you have something printed on there, but then they can use that as kind of an outline for their notes, tap on the area or tap on record, starts recording, and notes that they add to it with the pen will result in audio attached. So they can underline things, and that'll result with audio attached, and they could go and tap on PowerPoint slides there, and or tap on the notes they've made to what they printed out, and it'll have that audio recording attached. And that's a nice feature as well. One of the things you have to be careful of when you do use this, and I'm going to try and find where we would remove these. The notebooks that you use with this, they're each notebook has a number attached to it. So I believe there's 8 notebooks right now. So it's got a number 1 through 8 on it. And when you first start using it, there's a little sticker on the front of the notebook that prevents it from being open. You've got to tap on that with the pen. And then that pen recognizes that you're using that number notebook. So you have numbers 1 through 8. When you go through all 8 of those notebooks and you've filled them all up and you need to use a 9th notebook, you've got to go back and use the same number that you already have. So you get a new notebook, a second number 1 notebook. You're going to run into a little bit of issue there. And the issue is going to be that every page within that number 1 notebook, so the first page of your first number 1, the first page of your second number 1, both have the same dot pattern. So if you try and use them both at the same time, it's going to screw up the pen. So what you'd have to do is come here to your library of notebooks, and you'd right-click on one, and you would choose that you wanted to archive the notebook. When you archive the notebook, it would release it from the pen. So then you would have access to using the new number 1. It would take all your notebook stuff from your original notebook number 1 that was full and put it on the computer, so you could still access it on the computer. But then if you try to use it in the notebook, it wouldn't allow you to do that in the notebook. You would have to go back and reset it up. But what it does is it frees you up to use a new number 1. By then, when you tap on that new number 1, then you have access to using that. Does that make sense? I mean, we haven't run into too many people that have filled up enough notebooks where they've had to go back and archive and reset them. But this pen's been out a little while now, so I imagine that's going to start to be somewhat of an issue that some folks are going to run into. What's cool about this too is there's lots of different ways to be creative using it, and it doesn't have to be just students with disabilities. But again, the thing that I see, and the way that I see this really helping is your kids with ADHD, your kids with learning disabilities, your kids that struggle taking notes in class where they would sit there and try and write down everything the teacher says and then miss a lot because they're focusing more on writing notes. What this again allows you to do is take notes using keywords and linking it to that audio so that you can go back and review the audio later. I mentioned there's another way that students have used it with writing down math problems as they speak them. That's been a helpful way for some students. I've seen people use this as a communication tool as well, where they'll write words in the notebook and speak them as they write it, and then hand the student the pen and the notebook so the student can tap on those words and have them spoken back out loud as kind of a mid-tech communication device kind of thing. But really where you see the most benefit of this is with your students in middle school, high school, college that are doing a lot of heavy note-taking, where it allows them to record that audio and attach it to the notes. I don't think I mentioned the rule of thumb is that you can hold about 100 hours of recording per gig on your pen. So whatever your capacity is gig-wise, 4 gig would hold about 400 hours of recording. Because we've got this access to the computer, we can always take them and move them onto the computer, into that LiveScribe software. There is limited space within the LiveScribe software, but if you move things to your desktop, if you have a folder and you just save them to your computer, you can take and have everything saved directly on your computer for access that way. What happens if you fill up memory? Is that archived with, if you fill up audio memory? Again, we can also take and transfer the audio off of the pen to free things up. So you could take and you could transfer the audio off of the pen. Once we've gotten it, once we've gotten things in this LiveScribe setting, whether it's audio by itself or audio with the notes, we can go and delete it off the pen to free that up if you reach a certain level, or if you reach the capacity level. So you can transfer all of that to the computer and have it there. They will be archived with the notes if you do go ahead and archive that as well. But you know, you shouldn't ever have to worry about completely losing the audio, because you should be able to take it and dump it directly into the computer as well, so you've got all that access there. But you know, a couple 100 hours of recording really probably should last most people most of the semester. You know, if you're using this in a class setting, that's a lot of recording time that you've got kind of loaded up on there. Especially if you get if you opt for one of the higher options, like the 8 gig, 800 hours of recording time is a lot. I will say too, even though we think this is a great technology and it's a really helpful technology, I would never just go blind into a class and start using it in the class or in a meeting. I would certainly get consent from you know, my instructor and let the instructor know that we're using this. And if you're using it because of a disability, saying something along the lines of, you know, I'm using this because of a disability is probably the, you know, the way to go, and it's going to get you a long way with getting to be able to use that in the setting that you're using it in. The other thing I always recommend, you know, the microphone is very good. It picks up very well from a pretty good distance. However, I would still recommend sitting as close to the speaker as possible. And the reason being, if you're doing that, if you're sitting in the front row as opposed to the back row, you're picking up directly the instructor. You're not picking up all the stuff in between you and the instructor as well. So crumpling papers or you know, somebody writing hard or making noise, you're not going to pick that up if you're directly in front of the instructor. The one downside that I've found to it, and that some people don't like with it also, is that when you're recording, if you're a hard writer, so if you're pressing down kind of hard on the page, you can get kind of that scratching sound from your writing kind of attached to the audio as well, and for some folks that they may not like that. The other thing with this too is you don't have to write words. You can just make marks on the page, or if you're a visual person, you can draw on the page, and wherever you draw, whatever you draw is going to link it to what was recording at that time. It also can be helpful for somebody that has difficulty with writing quickly. You know, it allows, if they can write down 1 or 2 words, even in a slow manner, if they have a hard time reading their own notes, then something like this can be helpful because it is the audio component. This does have, if I'm going to pull out here so you can see, this is the ink cartridge. When you buy the pen, it does come with 1 extra ink cartridge. They're a little bit different in size, so you have to use the Smart Pen cartridges. You can buy more of those as well, and I think they're fairly inexpensive. I think I've covered about everything I can cover with the software, with trying to show you a little bit of the pen. I wanted to show you a little bit more about what it can do. Unfortunately, the technology here on campus is not cooperating today, so I'm unable to show you that under the document camera. Does anybody have any questions about the Smart Pen that I can answer for you? I'd be glad to do that before we let you go here, and I'd certainly be glad if you're ever in the area and wanted to stop by and take a look at one of these. We could certainly do that as well. But if anybody has any questions, I'll give a couple of minutes to see if there's anything that pops up here, and I'd be glad to answer anything. I appreciate Jenny's been working to try and get my other computer working so that we can show you with the document camera, but we're unable to get that squared away at this point. So if there's no questions, that's going to be about it, folks. I appreciate you coming in and dealing with some of the issues we had to deal with here today, and hope that even though we had some of those issues, I was able to at least get you a little bit interested in the Smart Pen and give you some understanding of how it works, so that you can continue to kind of explore that on your own. So if you don't have any other questions, we'll leave it at that, and thanks for swinging by today. That one's going to get surplus pretty soon.
No matter how early we came in here, that was going to get fixed.
No.
At least we can still cut.
Yeah.